All right, Melinda. I won't let you get away with this one. Welcome back to Dark Souls 2. This is Daz, and Daz is still seeking revenge against this treacherous Dark Phantom. Now, normally, I would split this up into two parts, both for the gutter, but the ensuing area is so short, and there's so little left of the gutter that I just combined them into one video. Now, unfortunately, our rematch is once again delayed by the fact that Melinda can't path for shit. This time, she appears to have actually made it down onto the solid ground, right as I made it back up to where she was. At this point, I'm not really sure what I should do, because I'm afraid if I go to meet her, she'll just be somewhere else by the time I get there. But fortunately, the path is short enough that I'm able to meet her on this bridge. And it turns out that on a bridge, a spear beats a great axe every day of the week. Finally. Alright. My honor has been restored. Somewhat. We've gotten just about everything that was over on this side, so it's time to warp on back over to the other side. Now, to proceed from here requires a bit of a sharp eye. A torch also helps. Fortunately for us, some helpful hollows have decided that they didn't want to wait and just busted open the breakable wall for us. So I suppose if you're stuck, that's one way to ensure that you find your way. The rest of the gutter is mostly confined to this area, and it's mostly vertical. If you look down through the floorboards, you can see quite a few platforms and ladders leading downwards. However, what's the deal with this fog wall? Delicious. Well, it turns out that we actually got here from behind. The way that I think the developers intended for you to come this way was by dropping down onto this platform with a dog on it, instead of exploring the other area where you had to make the jump across with all the spitting statues. Probably easier. But either way, it doesn't really matter. In fact, it's probably better to go the other way because you're more likely to see the bonfire. There's also some fog over this way. Is there another door? No. That is not a door. This bizarrely huge insectoid thing is actually not an enemy. It is completely non-hostile unless you attack it, and even if you attack it, I'm pretty sure it won't attack back. you can actually cure poison by going into that mist, though it will corrupt your equipment. So, out of respect for the delicate ecology of the gutter, I think I'm just going to leave the little guy alone. Little guy, big guy. Girl, maybe? I don't know. I'm not an entomologist. And I think even an entomologist would be pretty puzzled by that. It's like with Man, Scorpion, Tark. Just because something looks threatening or unfamiliar or what have you, doesn't mean you need to kill it. Unfortunately, I went with this assumption on my very first playthrough in Things Betwixt and tried to make friends with the ogres. It did not end well for me. There is a little bit of loot in this vertical section. Not an awful lot, but some. The challenge is mostly just finding the right ladders to take. There aren't any really complex jumps or ladder patterns, it's just you need to know the right one. The Lingering Dragon Crest ring will help our light last a little bit longer, and given that cast light is the only way to actually see anything on... Oh god, oh god, oh god. Well, that's one way down to the bottom. No silver cat ring would have helped me there. Everybody, please be careful. Watch where you're going. Even if you have a light on, that's no guarantee you're not going to slip and fall like an idiot. At any rate, I sort of lost my train of thought. Falling to your death will do that. Basically, there's a couple valuable treasures down here. They aren't hard to get if you're looking where you're going. And the only difficulty comes from being able to see what you're doing on a ladder, so cast light is very helpful. Now, without a light, I would be completely clueless about those two items and the chest over there. However, since I had cast light on, I could see them. Normally, I would just have to go on a guess, or look very carefully at one of those pots and see that there is in fact a shiny item in it. You can see those through the dark, thank goodness. All that's left is really just to find the ladder which leads down to the right platforms. Which isn't too hard, if you're careful. Some free pine resin is always appreciated, even if it's a little bit past its expiration date. This is also where you get the Great Club normally, instead of from the bonus Majula chest. Now, the gutter is available pretty much from the beginning of the game, if you go to, say, Hade's Tower of Flame and farm up the souls necessary for a Silver Cat ring. So if you're into big, striky weapons, coming down here early for the Great Club is definitely a good idea. There's nothing in here that really requires high stats or soul level or well-upgraded weapons. You might need to be a little bit more cautious with the dogs, and without a strong supply of poison moss, you might need to be more careful around the statues. But otherwise, this is not a very difficult area in terms of general numbers requirements. Also, we just got a whopping like 20-30 life gems. It's pretty ridiculous. Coming down here for those alone, if you don't lose most of that health just getting down here, that can be pretty profitable. Now, these somewhat grody looking jars are special. Some jars contain poison. These jars contain corrosive equipment. Goo. thing. The stuff that makes your equipment break. It's orange and it's gross. We've been getting so many poison throwing knives from hollows hanging out around here that I'm just going to use them to clear the way safely. We could also probably just use the spear, but there is always a danger of getting carried into the goo by the forward momentum from the thrust. So it's better to just use some throwing knives, maybe a spell, iron arrows or heavy bolts, what have you. And believe it or not, that's the end of the gutter. However, we're not done just yet. Black Gulch is sort of a continuation of the area. It's much easier to see in here because there's a strange sort of bioluminescence coming from that green fungus? Algae? Not really sure what it is. Lichen? Whatever it is, it makes torches no longer necessary. They're still helpful, however, so I'm going to keep cast light equipped because that will help us. Now, another thing about this area is that it's absolutely rotten with those stupid statues. So, to that effect, I'm going to equip the Santier's Spear and go to town without any concern in the world of my weapon breaking. I also decided to change my spells out a little bit. The poison acid will make sense a bit later. Cast light still makes it easier to see, even though it's not necessarily something you need to do. So, this area can be extremely tough if you don't know how to tackle it properly. Do not try to rush through it, unless you're very familiar with the area already. Instead, take it slow, take it steady, take out the statues as you go along, and try not to get yourself poisoned too many times, and you should be okay. If you don't have Santier's Spear or a lit torch, you can simply use your fists if you want to save on durability. It probably hurts a little bit, but you won't take any actual damage. There is nothing different about the statues with the lichen on them than the normal kind. They're just a bit more... Oh, hello. A bit more numerous and easier to see. So, these curious-looking leech monsters like to lurk in those oil pits. They will jump out at you and try to grab you if you get too close. For some, it's possible to just avoid them entirely by not getting close to the pools of oil. For others, you need to fight them. They're not especially difficult foes, but they do pack a punch if they hit you, so try not to get hit. There's a secret passageway down here that will be much to our advantage to take. So, carefully, we want to drop down. Kind of a difficult drop, honestly. You need to go very slowly. What the hell are you doing here, Lucatiel? What? Why? How did you get here?
Oh, you... My thoughts are very scattered. What is this curse? The question rings in my mind, but I haven't the focus to answer it. Loss frightens me no end. Loss of memory, loss of self. If I were told that by killing you I would be freed of this curse, then I would draw my sword without hesitation. I don't want to die. I want to exist. I would sacrifice anything at all for this. It shames me, but it is the truth. Sometimes I feel obsessed with this insignificant thing called self. Even so, I am compelled to preserve it. Am I wrong to feel so? Surely you do the same in my shoes. Maybe we're all cursed from the moment we're born. Sometimes maybe...
Lucatiel's in a bit of a bad way at the moment, and it doesn't look like she's going to get much better. So if we're ever going to find a way to remove this curse, we better do it soon-ish. It does bring up an interesting point, though. If it was actually within anybody's power to kill Hal, then maybe that would be a good thing. Who knows how long Hal has been alive, or unalive. Maybe it's been eons. There's no way to tell. But unfortunately, for now, we're just going to have to put up with continued existence as an undead. Here's a trick. You can light the oil pools on fire with fire arrows, pyromancy, or a fire-enchanted weapon. The leech monsters appear to subscribe to the boiling frog theory, and will not even think to move out of their pools until they're already dead. Now, it's certainly not necessary to do this, and it can make your life a little bit more difficult since the fire will hurt you too. But I would definitely at least recommend going down that passageway, talking to Lucatiel, and taking out those statues that will spit at you from above, because they can really make your life miserable quickly. It just occurred to me that I didn't even have my sacred chime equipped, so if I did get poisoned, Caressing Prayer wouldn't have done me a damn bit of good if I couldn't cast it. I would say that's one of... I'm not sure I want to call it a flaw with this series, but it's certainly something you need to get used to. There's a lot to keep track of, and the inventory system is a little complex. I don't want to say that it's a game design flaw, because I think to a certain extent it's sort of intended, but it's also maybe a little more obtuse than it needs to be. Now, these tunnel burrow worms might look pretty threatening. Actually, I think they look kind of cute from the front. But at least once we figure out a way to circumvent that statue spitting at us, dealing with them is extremely easy because they're pretty much anchored in place. They have one extremely telegraphed sideswipe move and are pretty much completely vulnerable otherwise. They do have a lot of health though, so don't overdo it when you're trying to kill them, or you probably will get hit by a counterattack just because you stayed there too long. The Santier Spear Twin Blade function will easily take them out quickly if you can get a couple good hits in. Which can be difficult because, you know, there's the statues and the fact that there's some weird angles going on as they sort of bend around. There's There's a second one here that's actually easier to deal with than the first because the angle is a little bit better. It also might help not to lock onto these guys. You can't actually see their health bar if you don't, because they're so big, but it is easier to hit them if you're not always facing towards their head. At any rate, there were only those two in basically the entire game. There's a couple more in the DLC area, but for a while, those were it. They sometimes drop poison stones, if you're interested in that. Speaking of sometimes dropping, these bizarre monstrosities that like to lurk in the oil will often drop titanite shards and titanite chunks. This is probably one of the better places to grind for those things if you don't want to spend the souls. Or, in the case of the chunks, you just want them in general, since you can't buy those. It's probably better just to use the normal sphere function to take out the statues, but sometimes it's fun to swing around it like a twin blade. Sometimes it's fun to swing it around like a twin blade because the animation is cool. Also pretty darn powerful if you land all of the hits on a strong attack. Provided they don't catch you off guard, the leech monsters are not a big deal. They certainly look threatening, and their grab attack will do a lot of damage if you let them hit you, but the tell of them popping up is pretty easy to see. If you just sort of skirt around the edges of these pools, and you're ready to roll away in case they're a little too close, you should be just fine. Of course, Hello? That looked like a cage elevator. Anyway, a confounding variable to this is the statues. They can turn otherwise easy fights into nightmares if they so choose. This semi-hidden bonfire is quite important. We're actually still in pretty good shape, so we're not going to rest at it just yet, but I want to have it unlocked. It provides a sort of shortcut down towards the boss area. But before we go there, we have some other business to attend to. At right around where the first worm is, you will find another ledge you can drop down to. This one will often have messages or, more worryingly, bloodstains on it to guide your way. There's also another one of those locked doors down here. Alright. This upcoming area is kind of terrifying. And on your first playthrough, if you stumble here, you will probably just lose your composure. Fortunately, this is not my first time through, and I know at least a little bit what to expect. So we are equipping ourselves accordingly. It's also very dark down here, so if you didn't use cast light to find the ledge, you should at least use it down here so you can see anything. So, down in this cave live two giant warriors. Unlike the last giant, who was not necessarily in the best shape of his life due to the fact that he has been imprisoned under pounds of rubble for however knows who long, for whoever knows how long, these guys are buff and well armed, and they will demolish you in a pair. 1-on-1, they're very manageable, but 2-on-1, good frickin' luck. Far and away the best way to deal with this fight is to use poison. Presumably the giants did not originate in the gutter, and thus do not have any special immunity to poison. Why they're down here in the first place is a good question. They say that the gutter is where things go to be forgotten, so maybe they were laying low, hiding from the law. Lord knows the king is not fond of giants. At any rate, by using ranged poison attacks like Poison Mist and poison arrows, poison throwing knives, etc., you can fairly easily sort of separate them and kill them one by one. Now that one is done, I'm not going to bother with poisoning the other one because that would just be a waste of time. The problem with this fight is that there's two of them, not that the foes themselves are insurmountable. Now, giant warriors are very strong, don't get me wrong. However, their attacks are fairly heavily telegraphed. And while they have extreme range and quite a bit of stopping power, they're not too difficult to avoid. Now, do be aware that these guys laugh at shields. Doesn't matter if you're using a buckler or Havel's Great Shield. Those giant clubs will just completely ignore that protection, so you need to dodge them. This is what got me into so much trouble in my first playthrough. I was speccing fairly heavily into heavy armor wearing, great shield using, great sword swinging, all around medieval Terminator. And they do that a lot better than I did, so I had some real trouble here. Our reward for coming down here is not only a way back up, but a petrified dragon bone, some silver talismans, and a forgotten key, as well as the giant's soul. All of these are pretty valuable, specifically the key and the giant's soul. I can't say that I know why that elevator is there. The giants certainly couldn't use it. Maybe it was for whoever put them there? Maybe they weren't hiding, but maybe they were imprisoned down here because nobody wanted to deal with two warriors at the same time? Who knows? At any rate, with the forgotten key, we can finally open these stupid doors. How on earth did you get in here?
Young undead, don't let this curse weigh upon you. We meet a second time. Perhaps you will yet traverse the dark. Young undead, if you truly seek the dark, then we will surely meet again. May we meet again, somewhere, sometime.
Alright, well that's completely inexplicable. The old man in the wheelchair, there seems to be more to him than it originally seems. Or maybe those strange stone structures that he's sitting next to, I should say, maybe they have some sort of transportation property. Who knows? He's probably magic. Lucatila's probably magic. They're all magic. Doesn't matter. They get to places way before we do when it makes no sense. Who cares? Time and space are convoluted. Let's go kill a boss or something. Never hurts to be too careful. whoever the boss is getting pretty noisy in there. Now, we are out of a lot of spell casts and durability and health and Estus flasks, so we're going to take advantage of this super nearby bonfire, use an effigy, and then get back into the fight with a friend. A short aside about the statues. They will not respawn if you rest at a bonfire, but they will respawn if you induce some kind of area loading screen. So, dying, warping, it's basically dying and warping, using a homeward bone, stuff like that, that will reset all the statues, but resting at a bonfire will not. I decide to attune Scraps of Life, which is a hex we just found by one of the worms. Now, the upcoming boss, surprisingly enough, does not have any poison to him, so I'm going to switch around our inventory a bit to better reflect our needs. The old classic. Alva's set with the Desert Sorceress skirt. For this fight, I think we'll go with the Silver Black Spear and our Pyromancy Flame. The old Leo Ring will help us quite a bit. I just want to put these two on different slots. A shield, much like with the giants, is not going to help us very much. After talking to her in that tunnel, Lucatiel will put down her summon sign here. And while she is not doing too well herself, she is still dedicated to her cause of helping us out when she can. This is the final fight in the base game where you can summon her for help. There is a fight in DLC areas where she will show up to help too. She gets a little confused by the leech monsters that are hiding in the pits, but since we're down here, she follows us pretty quickly. It was you! Or I guess I should say, it was you all. Meet the Rotten. The Rotten is a big hulking mask of hollows. I wanted to say hulking mass, but he also sort of has a mask of hollows too with that cage, so I guess it just sort of slipped out. At any rate, he's not a particularly inspiring boss. His visual design was, I think, done a lot better in Castlevania, and his attacks are incredibly boring. Sometimes he swings his giant meat cleaver, which is a series staple. Sometimes he tries to grab you, and sometimes he swings his meat cleaver some more. Oh, also he's big and gross in a gross boss of a gross place, so he pukes sometimes. Now, Scraps of Life is sort of a hit-or-miss spell. Turns out I wasn't nearly close enough to actually hit him with anything. He also has that AoE Dark attack, but all of the Rotten's attacks are incredibly telegraphed. If you play passively, or at very least you pay attention, then there is very little chance you'll get hit by anything. The main danger in this fight is actually the environment. The statues, thank God, don't spit at you, but... hello. The flaming oil hurts a lot. And it's especially troublesome if Lucatiel gets stuck in one, because as tough as she is, even she won't survive in there for long. I only suffered one hit, and that was because I was impatient to get it done with. There are a couple of tricks to that fight that actually make it a lot harder, if you're into that, and I'll show those off a bit later. But for the purposes of this playthrough, I just wanted to be done with it. Not my favorite boss, not by a long shot. There's actually an item hidden in his arena, a fire seed, protected by some flaming oil. It does a lot more damage than the stuff that you light, so be really careful. The way out is through this little passageway. It's actually a little bit hard to see from some angles. Our reward is... drumroll... the final Sublime Bone Dust. Once we burn this in the far fire, we'll be at full capacity, at least in terms of Estus Flask healing. Huh. This is a pretty impressive chamber. Oh, whatever. Oh, hello! Alright, let's rumble, whoever you are. Or not? Hi. Salt and I are just friends. Well. Okay then. This is actually the first instance of some of the Scholar of the First Sin bonus content. That giant mess of a thing will show up after you kill your last great old one at that primal bonfire. As terrifying as he looks, he's certainly not hostile. In fact, he might even be friendly.
You are blessed with a myriad of souls. Bearer of the curse, make your way to the castle.
Before we do that, we should probably at least use that bone dust. I also have some conversations I want to have with some of the people here. Now that we have finally killed all 4 great old ones, Shalkor will actually open up a bit and tell us some interesting tidbits. Alright, kitty cat, spill the beans.
Well, you've grown quite a bit, haven't you? Your scent is lovelier than it's ever been.
I was just in a sewer!
Trot along to the castle and meet the king. Long ago, he smelled just like you. Not so much anymore, though. He's quite rancid by now. But we cats love that. It's an acquired taste.
God, you're a weirdo. As an aside, we can now buy the flying feline boots after we have killed both the Royal Rat Vanguard and the Royal Rat Authority. They cut down falling damage and look kind of silly, much like the Jester's tights. There's no reason to have both of them, but you know.
Once, people tried to round up the undead and hide them away from the world. They thought that imprisoning the undead would solve the problem. They created a towering bastille to contain them, but in the end, it did no good. The lost sinner lives deep within the bastille. The fool, trying to light the first flame. Why do people try so hard to be beautiful? We cats are born beautiful, of course. The human ego. How many ugly iron castles has it erected? And they don't even see the folly of their ways. But that's what makes watching humankind so delightful. It reminds me of someone who lived long ago. A vainglorious liar who ended up hurling himself into the flames. Now he's Icarus Earth, if I'm not mistaken. You've seen that gaping hole here? Well, there's nasty little vermin down there. Although who you seek is even further below. And has been down there for a very, very long time. He's plumb rotten by now, I'm sure. Men develop the most peculiar fascinations. Sometimes their fascinations seem to take control. Till there's very little man left. Oh, it's like that awful traitor long ago. He coveted what he did not have, and it drove him mad. What a curious conundrum. The writhing ruin keeps searching as we speak. Searching for its heart's desire. Once, the lost...
Well, that was quite instructive. Why she decided to wait and tell us until they were all dead, I don't know. Cats. Checking back in with the map, another flame has lit up. Presumably, right next to Majula, because we didn't really travel much of a lateral distance anywhere. We will go see the king next time.